welcome to the Instagram Stories Weekend Edition. I'm your host, Daniel Hill. It is Friday, September 8th. We are going to do some Instagram news, some TikTok news, then we will take a break, and I will talk about a tool that I think you absolutely should be using on all of your devices. Make sure you listen to the end. You're going to like it. Okay, the New York Times is reporting that Meta may allow Instagram and Facebook users in Europe to pay and therefore avoid ads. This subscription plan is a response to European Union policies and court rulings to restrict Meta's data collection practices. I will definitely link to this article in the show notes, but essentially this article goes through a timeline of what the EU courts have done over the past few years, starting in 2018 with Europe's General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, which was legislation designed to protect people's online data. Since then, a new EU law called the Digital Services Act has taken effect, and by next year, another EU tech-focused law, the Digital Markets Act, will take effect, which is designed to force big tech platforms to change certain business practices to encourage competition, and will undoubtedly have wide-ranging impacts. And the New York Times article cites an example of Apple being expected to allow users in the EU to download alternatives to the Apple App Store on iPhones and iPads for the first time. The New York Times is reporting that some Meta insiders believe that giving users the choice of opting out of an ad-based service while still being able to access a paid version of Facebook or Instagram could alleviate some European regulators' concerns. Even if a few people choose to use that paid version, making this kind of option available could serve Meta's interests in the long term. Now, historically, the Instagram team has said that creating a paid subscription version of Instagram would not be financially viable for them, since ad revenue is the main generator of income for Instagram. Curious to see how this plays out, and I will, of course, keep you posted. Let's move on to the TikTok news. First, a little bit of context. Do you remember when Instagram had a shop feed in the Instagram app? There was a button at the bottom. Eventually, Instagram removed that button because people weren't really using it, and the shop feed is not something we think about much. However, TikTok has created a shop feed within the TikTok app. So at the top, you have the For You tab, which is probably what you spend most of your time in, and the Following tab, which are the videos from people that you follow. In between those two is a new Shop tab, which I have and I've been experimenting with. What's interesting is what products are displayed on this tab. For instance, in my case, there is a very similar microphone to something I've been looking at on Amazon recently for making videos, as well as some other products that I know have been viral through the app because people have been recommending them and I've seen them come up in videos. The Bloomberg article that I will link to in the show notes all about the TikTok shop explains that it's mostly a showcase for cheap goods from China. That's a bit confusing to me because I think almost everything we buy that's electronic these days does come from China. So I think that's just the way the world works now. But this Bloomberg article seems to think that that's a big deal. The article also talks about how there are no brands listed before clicking the product, so you don't really see any of the brand names. I'm not a person who shops by a brand name, so that doesn't bother me, but that may be an issue for someone else. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a tech tool that you definitely should be using, so stick around.
Level up your listening with Bose Quiet Comfort Ultra earbuds and headphones with immersive sound and world-class noise cancellation for a not-so-silent night. Visit Bose.com/Spotify to shop sound that's more than a present.
And we're back. Okay, let's talk about a tech tool that you absolutely need to be using. If you have not heard of uBlock Origin, I cannot recommend this tool enough. uBlock Origin is all about creating an ad-free experience for you on the web. Whether you use a browser on your desktop or your phone, I absolutely recommend installing uBlock Origin. In my experience, it works best with Firefox, but if you are on iPhone, for instance, you don't have the ability to install third-party add-ons like uBlock Origin. So even though I definitely recommend it, in this case, because I know a lot of you are iPhone users, I'm going to recommend an alternative called the Brave browser. You can find it on the Apple App Store. Why is using an ad blocker so important? When you go through your experience of browsing the web, a lot of things can happen because of ads that you did not ask for. If you've ever been on a website and then shopped for an item, maybe later in the day you saw an ad for that item on a completely different web page, you might not want that experience. It's your device. You decide what happens on that device. And so therefore, installing an ad blocker is an absolutely great way to ensure that you're in total control of your device. I cannot recommend uBlock Origin enough. I will link to it in the show notes so you can check it out for yourself. That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great weekend and come back next time for more tech news, social media news, and other things that I think you need to know.
Instagram news got you covered, sometimes even TikTok. Relevant platforms in the metaverse ahead of the wave, without a break or a pit stop. Still waiting for Zuckerberg to give me the big job. Pause. Use trademarks and logos with Insta's permission, of course. If you like the show and you gain some good info, maybe leave a review. It's a type of applause. Just drop me a message if you want to collab. If you got some good content or you want to run ads, at Daniel Hill Media is where I am. TikTok, Facebook and Instagram.